The sun was setting over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I stood on the balcony of our beachfront villa, feeling the salty breeze brush against my face. It should have been perfect, this vacation we had planned for months, but something felt off. A nagging sensation lingered at the back of my mind, like an invisible thread pulling me toward unease. "James," she called from inside, her voice soft but distant. "Are you coming? Dinner's getting cold." I turned to look at her through the sliding glass door. Emma sat at the small dining table, her golden hair catching the last rays of sunlight streaming through the window. She smiled, a smile that used to make my heart race but now only made me question everything. Was it real? Or just another mask she wore so well? "I'll be there in a minute," I replied, forcing a calm tone into my voice. We had been married for 7 years. 7 beautiful, chaotic, unforgettable years. We met in college, fell in love during those late-night study sessions, and promised each other forever under a canopy of stars. But lately, forever felt more like a fragile illusion than a solid promise. Emma had been acting strange for weeks before this trip. Distracted phone calls, hurried texts when she thought I wasn't looking, excuses to leave the house after work. At first, I told myself it was nothing. People get busy. Life gets complicated. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As I stepped back inside, I noticed her phone lying on the counter. She must have left it behind when she went to freshen up. The screen lit up with a notification, a message from someone named Liam. My stomach tightened as I read the preview. "Can't wait to see you again." My hands froze mid-reach. What was this? Who was Liam? And why did his words feel like shards of glass piercing through me? "James." Emma's voice startled me. I quickly grabbed her phone and shoved it into my pocket, pretending to adjust my shirt. Yeah, I'm coming," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Dinner passed in a blur. Emma talked about the sights we'd seen earlier that day, her laughter filling the room, while I nodded along mechanically, my thoughts consumed by the device burning a hole in my pocket. Later that evening, as Emma drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The weight of suspicion pressed heavily on my chest. I knew I shouldn't snoop. It wasn't right. But curiosity clawed at me, relentless and unyielding. Finally, unable to resist any longer, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the living room. Sitting alone on the couch, I stared at her phone, hesitating. This could change everything. Did I really want to know? But then again, didn't I deserve to know? With trembling fingers, I unlocked the screen, noticing how easily I remembered her passcode, and opened the gallery app. That's when I saw it, a hidden folder labeled Vacation Memories. What I found inside would shatter my world. My heart pounded as I tapped on the folder, half expecting it to be empty or filled with harmless vacation photos. But what I saw instead made my blood run cold. There were dozens of pictures that didn't include me. Pictures of Emma laughing, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in months. And standing beside her, his arm casually draped around her shoulders, was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with dark hair and an easy smile that radiated confidence. In one photo, they stood close together under a waterfall, their faces tilted toward each other like magnets drawn by some invisible force. In another, they sat at a cafe table, sharing a dessert, their fingers brushing against each other as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Each image felt like a punch to the gut. My hands shook so violently that I nearly dropped the phone. I scrolled through the gallery again, hoping, praying, that there was some explanation, some context that would make sense of this betrayal. But the truth stared back at me, undeniable and cruel. "Who is he?" I whispered aloud, my voice cracking under the weight of emotion. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to unleash the storm brewing inside me. But instead, I sat frozen, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away furiously. No, I wouldn't cry, not yet, not until I understood everything. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching into eternity. I forced myself to breathe deeply, trying to calm the tempest raging within. How could she do this? After all we'd been through, after all the promises we'd made, how could she look me in the eye every day and lie to my face? And then it hit me, the messages, the hurried phone calls, the excuses to leave the house. It all made sense now. Every little detail I had brushed off as paranoia suddenly clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle, forming a picture I wished I could unsee. But there was still one question gnawing at me. When did this happen? Was it recent, or had it been going on for months, or even years, right under my nose? I opened the messaging app next, dreading what I might find but unable to stop myself. The conversation thread with Liam was long, filled with casual banter and intimate jokes that felt like daggers slicing through my soul. They talked about meeting up, about plans for future trips, about moments they shared when I wasn't around. One message stood out among the rest. "You're the only one who truly understands me," Liam had written. Emma's reply chilled me to the bone. I wish things were different. Different? What did that even mean? Did she regret marrying me? Did she ever love me at all? Anger began to replace the shock, burning hot and fierce in my chest. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Betrayal. That's what this was. Pure, unadulterated betrayal. Suddenly, I heard a soft creak behind me. My head snapped up just in time to see Emma standing in the doorway, her expression shifting from sleepy confusion to wide-eyed panic as she realized what I held in my hands. "James," she started, her voice trembling. "What are you doing with my phone?" For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, slowly, deliberately, I turned the screen toward her, showing her exactly what I had found. Her face went pale, her lips parting as though she wanted to say something, but no words came out. "Well?" I demanded, my voice low and sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Care to explain?" She took a step back, shaking her head. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I shot back, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Because it sure seems pretty clear to me." Emma sank onto the couch opposite me, burying her face in her hands. For a fleeting second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she murmured, her voice muffled. "It just happened." "Just happened?" I repeated, incredulous. "Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds?" She looked up at me then, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, James. I never wanted to hurt you." "Too late for that," I said coldly, my anger hardening into something icy and unyielding. In that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. First, nothing would ever be the same again. And second, I couldn't let her get away with this, not without consequences. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting light into the room, I began to formulate a plan. A plan that would ensure Emma paid for what she had done. The sun rose higher, its golden rays streaming through the windows and illuminating the wreckage of our marriage. But I couldn't appreciate the beauty outside, not when my world felt like it was crumbling beneath me. Emma sat across from me, her tears drying but her guilt written all over her face. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her betrayal. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to tell you, eventually." "Eventually?" I echoed, my tone laced with disbelief. "When exactly were you planning on telling me, Emma? After we celebrated our 10th anniversary? Or maybe after we grew old together?" She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. The anger inside me was a living thing now, twisting and coiling like a snake ready to strike. "It started innocently enough," she continued, wringing her hands nervously. "Liam and I met at work. He's a consultant who came in for a project. We just connected. It wasn't supposed to go further than friendship, but it did." I finished for her, my jaw tightening. "And you let it." She nodded, shamefaced. "Yes, I let it, and I know I can't take it back. But James, please believe me when I say I never stopped loving you." Her words hit me like a slap. Loving me? How could she claim to love me while lying to me, deceiving me, and sharing intimate moments with another man? It made no sense. None of this made sense. You don't get to say that, I snapped, standing abruptly. You don't get to sit there and act like everything's okay because it's not. You destroyed us, Emma. Do you even realize that? She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off before she could speak. No, don't. Just don't. I turned away from her, pacing the room as my mind raced. Every step fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about her affair anymore. It was about justice. About making sure she understood the magnitude of what she had done. As the hours passed, I retreated into myself, shutting her out completely. She tried to talk to me several times, pleading for forgiveness, but I ignored her. Instead, I focused on piecing together the fragments of her deception. I went through her phone again, more methodically this time. There were texts, photos, even saved locations tagged with places they had visited together. One location caught my attention, a secluded cabin in the mountains, booked under Liam's name. According to the messages, they had planned to meet there next month. A cold smile spread across my lips as an idea began to form. If Emma thought she could play games with me, then she was about to learn just how dangerous those games could be. By mid-afternoon, I had devised a plan. One that would expose her betrayal and leave her with nowhere to hide. I called my best friend, Marcus, pretending everything was fine. "Hey, man," I said casually, masking the storm brewing inside me. "Listen, I need a favor. Can you cover for me at work tomorrow? Something's come up." Marcus hesitated. "Sure, but is everything all right?" Yeah, it's fine," I lied smoothly. "Just some personal stuff I need to take care of." Once the call ended, I turned to Emma, who was sitting silently on the couch, staring at her hands. "We're going somewhere tomorrow," I announced, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, startled. "Where?" "The mountains," I replied, holding her gaze. "There's a cabin I rented for the weekend. Thought it might be nice to get away from everything for a bit." For a brief moment, relief flickered across her face. She probably thought I was trying to salvage what was left of our relationship. Little did she know, this trip would be anything but romantic. "That sounds nice," she said cautiously, clearly unsure of my intentions. "It will be," I assured her, my tone icy beneath its surface warmth. "Trust me." Later that evening, as Emma packed our bags, I made one final preparation. I sent a text to Liam, from Emma's phone, telling him to meet us at the cabin. His reply came almost instantly, "Can't wait to see you both." Both. The words sent a fresh wave of fury coursing through me. So he knew about me. He knew and didn't care. As night fell, I lay awake once more, staring at the ceiling while Emma slept beside me. Her breathing was steady, peaceful even, as though she hadn't a care in the world. But I knew better. Tomorrow would change everything, for both of us. And as much as it pained me to admit, part of me was looking forward to watching her squirm. The drive to the mountains was tense, suffocating. Emma sat beside me in the passenger seat, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater as she stared out the window. She tried to make small talk a few times, about the weather, the scenery, but I gave her only clipped responses, my focus fixed on the road ahead. Inside, my mind raced. Every mile we covered brought us closer to the confrontation I had been envisioning since discovering her betrayal. My plan was simple yet calculated. Confront Liam face to face, expose his role in destroying my marriage, and force Emma to reckon with the consequences of her actions. But there was another layer to it, a darker one that I hadn't fully admitted to myself. Somewhere deep within, anger and hurt had twisted into something colder, sharper. Revenge wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about control, about making sure they both understood the pain they had inflicted upon me. As we wound our way up the mountain roads, the air grew cooler, crisper. The trees towered above us, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sunlight. It felt fitting somehow, the isolation, the remoteness. This place would bear witness to what was about to unfold. When we finally arrived at the cabin, it was exactly as advertised. Rustic, secluded, surrounded by dense forest. A thin trail of smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting someone had already lit a fire inside. Emma hesitated before stepping out of the car, her eyes scanning the area nervously. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she asked, her voice tinged with unease. Why wouldn't it be? I replied coolly, grabbing our bags from the trunk. She didn't answer, but the look on her face said enough. She knew something was off, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Good. Let her wonder. Let her feel the same unease that had haunted me since finding those photos. We entered the cabin together, the warmth of the fire doing little to dispel the chill between us. The interior was cozy, with wooden beams lining the ceiling and a plush rug covering the floor. But none of it mattered to me. All I cared about was the moment when Liam would walk through that door. I set the bags down and turned to Emma, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Make yourself comfortable," I said. "I'll go grab some firewood from outside." She nodded absently, wandering over to the couch and sinking into it. As soon as I stepped outside, I pulled out my phone and checked the messages again. Liam was due to arrive any minute now. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. My pulse quickened as I watched him step out of his car, a sleek black sedan that screamed arrogance. He looked just like he did in the photos. Tall, confident, oblivious to the storm he was walking into. "James," he called out, waving as he approached. His smile faltered slightly when he saw the expression on my face. "Liam," I greeted him, my tone flat. "Glad you could make it." He glanced past me toward the cabin, where Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her hand pressed against her mouth in shock. "What's going on?" Liam asked, his brow furrowing. "You tell me," I said, taking a step closer. "Care to explain why you've been messaging my wife behind my back?" His eyes widened, and for a brief moment, panic flashed across his features. Then, just as quickly, he composed himself, raising his hands defensively. "Look, man, I don't know what you think you know, but nothing," I interrupted, my voice rising. "You've been lying to me, to her, to everyone. Did you really think you'd get away with it?" Emma rushed forward then, her voice trembling. "James, please, let me explain." "No," I shouted, spinning around to face her. "You've had your chance to explain, Emma. Now it's my turn." Liam took a cautious step back, clearly realizing he was in over his head. "Maybe I should go," he muttered, glancing toward his car. "Oh no," I said, moving to block his path. "You're not going anywhere. Not until we settle this." The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to choke on. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. Not just fear of me, but fear of each other. They had built their secret world together, and now it was crumbling around them. "Let's go inside," I said, gesturing toward the cabin. "We need to talk." Reluctantly, they followed me, their footsteps heavy with dread. Once we were all seated in the living room, I closed the door firmly behind us, sealing us off from the outside world. "This ends today," I declared, my voice cold and steady, "one way or another." And with that, the real game began. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room. The three of us sat in an uneasy triangle, Emma on the couch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Liam perched awkwardly on the edge of a chair, his confidence visibly shaken. And me, standing by the fireplace, my posture rigid, my expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the occasional pop of burning wood. Then, finally, Emma broke it. "James," she began, her voice trembling, "please, let me explain." I turned to her, my gaze piercing. "Explain what, exactly?" "How you lied to me for months. How you carried on this affair right under my nose." My voice rose with each word, the anger simmering beneath the surface threatening to boil over. "It wasn't like that," she protested, tears welling up in her eyes. "It started as something innocent, a friendship. I never meant for it to go this far." "Innocent?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call sneaking around behind my back innocent? You call sharing intimate moments with him innocent?" Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearing his throat. "Look, James, I know this looks bad, but nothing," I snapped, cutting him off. "You don't get to speak yet. Not until I'm ready." He fell silent, his jaw tightening. For all his earlier bravado, He now looked like a man caught in a trap with no way out. Good. That's exactly how I wanted him to feel. Turning back to Emma, I continued, my tone icy. Do you have any idea what it feels like to find out the person you trusted most, the person you loved more than anything, has been betraying you? To see photos of her laughing with someone else, touching someone else, living a life she kept hidden from you? She lowered her head, unable to meet my gaze. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. Sorry isn't enough, I said sharply. Sorry doesn't fix what you've done. Sorry doesn't erase the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. Liam tried to intervene again, his voice hesitant. James, I understand you're upset, but maybe we can. Upset? I interrupted, rounding on him. Upset doesn't even begin to cover it. You waltzed into our lives, into my life, and thought you could take whatever you wanted without consequences. Did you ever stop to think about how this would affect anyone else? Or were you too busy enjoying yourself? His face flushed red, whether from guilt or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. I didn't mean for things to escalate like this, he admitted quietly. It just happened. That excuse is getting old. I shot back, my patience wearing thin. People make choices, Liam. And your choice was to pursue a married woman. My wife. What did you think would happen? That I'd just sit back and let you ruin everything I've worked for? Emma stood abruptly, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Stop it, she cried, her voice breaking. Stop tearing into him. This isn't all his fault. It's mine too. I made the decision to keep seeing him, to keep lying to you. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Her outburst caught me off guard, but only for a moment. Oh, don't worry, I said coldly. There's plenty of blame to go around. I stepped closer to her, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. But here's the thing, Emma. You didn't just cheat on me. You shattered the trust one had in you. You made me question every single moment we've ever shared. Was any of it real? Or was it all just a lie? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. No, James, not everything. Our life together. It was real. It still is. Please, you have to believe me. Believe you? I echoed bitterly. How can I believe anything you say when you've proven time and time again that you can't be trusted? Liam stood then, his expression conflicted. Maybe I should leave, he said, glancing toward the door. No, I said firmly, blocking his path once again. You're not going anywhere. Not until we settle this. The room seemed to shrink around us, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on all sides. I could see the fear in their eyes, the realization that they were trapped, forced to face the fallout of their actions. And yet, despite the anger coursing through me, a small part of me hesitated. Was this really what I wanted? To drag them both through the mud, to expose every ugly detail of their betrayal? But then I remembered the photos, the messages, the lies, and my resolve hardened once more. This isn't over, I said, my voice steady, not by a long shot. As the fire continued to burn in the hearth, so too did the flames of my determination. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Neither Emma nor Liam would walk away unscathed. The air in the cabin was thick with tension, each breath feeling heavier than the last. I stood between them, my presence a barrier they couldn't cross, a storm they couldn't escape. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their betrayal and imagining how to make them pay, not just for what they had done, but for the pain they had caused. Emma's tears had slowed, replaced by a quiet desperation as she searched my face for some sign of forgiveness. But there was none to be found. Not anymore. James, she pleaded, her voice barely audible. Please let me fix this. Let us fix this. Us? I repeated, my tone dripping with disdain. There is no us anymore, Emma. You destroyed that the moment you chose him over me. Liam shifted uncomfortably, his earlier attempts at composure crumbling under the weight of guilt. He opened his mouth to speak, but I silenced him with a sharp glare. You don't get to talk, I said coldly. Not until I decide what happens next. I turned back to Emma, my gaze unwavering. Do you even realize what you've lost? Do you understand the magnitude of what you threw away for him? She flinched at my words, her shoulders sagging as though the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. "I know I messed up," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But people make mistakes, James. Doesn't everyone deserve a second chance?" "A second chance?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think this is about giving you another shot? This isn't about forgiveness, Emma. It's about consequences. About making sure you never forget what you've done." Her eyes widened, fear flickering across her features. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the depth of my anger, and the lengths I was willing to go to ensure she paid for her betrayal. Liam, sensing the shift in the room, stood abruptly. "Look, James, I get it. You're angry, and you have every right to be. But maybe we can find a way to resolve this without things getting worse." "Worse?" I snapped, rounding on him. "You think it could possibly get worse for you? You waltzed into my life, seduced my wife, and thought you'd walk away unscathed. Well, guess what, Liam? That's not how this works." His face paled, and he took a step back, his hands raised defensively. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I swear. If I could take it back, I would." "Too late for regrets," I said, my voice low and cutting. "Actions have consequences, and yours are about to catch up with you." I moved toward the table where I had placed my phone earlier, picking it up and scrolling through the photos and messages I had saved from Emma's device. Each image burned brighter in my memory than the last, a constant reminder of their deceit. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with panic. "Making sure neither of you forgets," I replied, holding up the phone so they could see the screen. "These aren't just pictures or texts. They're proof of your lies. Proof that will follow you wherever you go." Liam's expression darkened, his confidence shattered. "You wouldn't." "I would," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for doubt. "If I wanted to, I could send these to your boss, your family, everyone you know. Imagine how that would feel, Liam. Imagine having your perfect little world torn apart the way you tore mine apart." He sank back into his chair, defeated. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking, "don't do this." Emma rushed to his side, placing a hand on his arm. "James, stop. Please, don't ruin his life over this. It's not fair." "Fair?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You want to talk about fairness? How is it fair that I trusted you, loved you, gave you everything, and you threw it all away for him?" She recoiled as if struck, her tears flowing freely now. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." But apologies weren't enough. Not this time. I stepped closer to them, my anger burning hotter than ever. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice cold and commanding. "You two are going to sit here and listen while I tell you exactly how this ends. Because one way or another, you're both going to pay for what you've done." The fire in the hearth crackled loudly, its warmth doing nothing to ease the chill in the room. As I outlined my plan, their faces grew paler, their bodies tense with dread. And for the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. They had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn to take something from them. I paced the room, my footsteps echoing against the wooden floor as I laid out the terms of their punishment. Each word was deliberate, calculated to strip away any illusion of control they might still cling to. "Here's how this is going to work," I began, my voice steady and unyielding. "You two will stay here in this cabin for the rest of the weekend. No phones, no contact with the outside world. Just the two of you and me." Emma's eyes widened in alarm. "What are you talking about? You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, cutting her off with a sharp look. "And I will. Consider it a taste of what betrayal feels like. Isolation, helplessness, knowing that someone else holds all the power." Liam stood abruptly, his face pale but defiant. "This is insane, James. You're not thinking clearly. Let us leave, and we'll figure this out later," calmly. "Calmly?" I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and devoid of humor. "You think I'm overreacting? After everything you've done, you expect me to sit back and let you walk away without consequences? No, that's not how this works." I turned to Emma, who had collapsed onto the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. "As for you," I continued, my tone softening slightly, but only slightly. You wanted him so badly, didn't you? Well, now you'll have plenty of time together. Maybe you can figure out if your connection is worth ruining your life over. Her lips parted as though she wanted to protest, but no words came out. Instead, tears streamed down her face, unchecked and relentless. And don't even think about trying to leave, I added, pulling a set of keys from my pocket, the keys to both cars. These stay with me. If either of you tries anything stupid, trust me when I say you won't like the outcome. Liam sank back into his chair, his earlier bravado completely gone. He glanced at Emma, then at me, his expression a mixture of fear and resignation. James, please, there has to be another way. There isn't, I said flatly. This is the price you pay for your choices. For lying. For betraying me. The fire crackled again, its light casting eerie shadows on the walls. I could feel the weight of their stares, their fear palpable in the air. It was intoxicating in a way, knowing that I held all the cards, that they were at my mercy. But beneath the surface, a small part of me hesitated. Was I crossing a line? Had my anger driven me too far? No, they deserved this. Every second of it. Now, I said, clapping my hands together as though sealing the deal. Let's get comfortable. We've got a long weekend ahead of us. The hours passed slowly, each one heavier than the last. The cabin, once cozy and inviting, now felt suffocating, a prison for the three of us. Emma and Liam sat silently on opposite ends of the couch, avoiding eye contact, while I watched them from the armchair by the fire. At first, they tried to reason with me, pleading for leniency, for understanding. But I ignored their appeals, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Finally, Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, James, she begged, her voice raw with emotion. I'll do anything. Just let me go. Let us go. Anything? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Would you give up everything for me? Your career, your freedom, your dignity? She froze, her sobs subsiding as she realized the gravity of my question. I don't know, she stammered. That's the problem, isn't it? I said, leaning forward. You made your choice when you decided to pursue him. Now you live with the consequences. Liam, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. This isn't fair to her, he said, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. Whatever happens between us, Emma doesn't deserve to be punished like this. I laughed coldly, shaking my head. Oh, Liam, still playing the hero, even now? You don't get to decide what's fair or unfair. Not after what you've done. He clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. Fine. Punish me then. Do whatever you want of me. But leave her out of it. Emma turned to him, her expression a mix of gratitude and despair. Liam, she whispered, reaching for his hand. No, I snapped, standing abruptly. Enough. Stop acting like victims. You brought this on yourselves. I moved closer to them, my presence looming over them like a storm cloud. Do you think I enjoyed finding those photos? Reading those messages? Watching my entire life crumble because of your selfishness? This isn't just about revenge. It's about making sure neither of you forgets what you've done. They exchanged a glance, their guilt and regret evident in their expressions. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then I remembered the pain they had caused me, and my resolve hardened once more. You'll stay here until Sunday, I reiterated, my tone leaving no room for argument. After that, well, we'll see. By Saturday evening, the tension in the cabin had reached a breaking point. Emma and Liam barely spoke to each other, their earlier attempts at solidarity replaced by awkward silences and stolen glances. Emma spent most of her time curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, while Liam wandered aimlessly around the cabin, his anxiety growing with each passing hour. As for me, I observed them from a distance, watching as their guilt consumed them. It was fascinating, in a way, seeing how quickly their confidence had evaporated, replaced by fear and regret. Finally, late that night, Emma approached me, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen from crying. James, she began, her voice trembling, I need to tell you something. What now? I asked, my tone indifferent. I never stopped loving you, she confessed, her voice breaking. Even when I was with him, it was always you. Always. For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could she really mean it? Or was this just another lie, another attempt to manipulate me? Before I could respond, Liam stepped forward, his expression conflicted. Don't listen to her, James, he said, his voice strained. She's just saying that to save herself. Emma spun around, glaring at him. How dare you? You don't get to speak for me. Their argument escalated quickly, accusations flying back and forth until the room was filled with shouting and tears. I watched silently, my anger giving way to exhaustion. This wasn't what I had envisioned. This chaos, this destruction, it wasn't satisfying anymore. It was empty. When they finally fell silent, drained and defeated, I stood and addressed them both. This ends tomorrow, I said, my voice weary but resolute. We leave this place, and we never speak of it again. Sunday morning arrived quietly, the sun casting golden light through the windows. As we packed our bags and prepared to leave, none of us spoke. The weight of the past few days hung heavy in the air, unresolved and lingering. On the drive home, Emma sat beside me, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. James, she said softly, thank you for letting us go. I didn't respond. Instead, I climbed out of the car and walked inside, closing the door behind me. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. There would be no reconciliation, no second chances. What they had done couldn't be undone. As I sat alone in the house we once shared, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had only left me emptier than before. But perhaps, in time, I could find peace. Not through anger, but through letting go.